Years ago, a teacher at a class I was attending began his class with a kind of a probing, unusual question. He said, "What do people think about when they're not thinking about anything else?" And, I don't know if anybody actually knew the answer, but he said, they think about their tribe or their kind of larger community, the point of reference, the connection that they feel to their local culture, society, bigger than just a nuclear family typically. Might be their company, might be their church, might be whatever. But so it was an interesting question because that what it implies is that we're looking for feedback. When we lived in India, among many, many lessons, one of the first lessons that I learned came from the traffic in India, which is, at least in the city where we lived, was vigorous, busy, packed, a little bit like a parking lot at times. But anyway, one of the things I learned from that traffic is about blowing horns. And so, you'll see a truck in India, and on the back of the truck will be painted or, stenciled or in some way written, often in very big letters, "Blow horn," or "Horn please." And, this is mystifying to a Westerner. Why would a truck ask you to blow your horn? Well, it's because the truck is big. The truck has side view mirrors, but they may be obscured, they may be broken. The driver may have a limited view of those things. The driver may just frankly not be bothered to look back there. And the driver is saying, "I want to know if you're there so that I don't crush you, so that I don't drive into you. I would rather have you blow your horn to let me know that you're there, and then I will avoid you or do whatever." So anyway, coming back to the parking lot sort of traffic, or even just traffic that's moving. But one of the things you notice it instantly, is that everyone is tooting their horn. And, for a Westerner, this is like, good Lord, is this just like road rage gone wild on like a national level? Not at all. It's points of reference. And those points of reference simply, kind of like a bat sends out echolocation, little sonar signals that bounce off of things. I learned recently, referring to bats, I learned that bats actually have a certain ability to predict the future. They are predictive of where that bug is going to go. The bug that they're about to eat for part of their dinner, and other bats. They live in a world of probability, but that echolocation thing is what's happening on the highway, on the roads of India all the time. And it's just cars kind of saying, "Okay, I'm here. Yeah, I'm here. Yeah, you, yeah, gotcha. Yep. We're all here." It's like toot, 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 toot. And we're just being located in and if you start to move over right on top of somebody, you'll get a real horn like you might in New York City or someplace else. But that little tooting all the time is indicative of a culture that is used to giving lots of feedback, lots of points of reference. In fact, one of the things we came to know, we didn't know it arriving in India, one has all sorts of romantic notions about a country or a culture before you get there. Some of them prove out to be quite valid, and others, you learn things that you had no way of imagining. Other things that you imagined are just totally not relevant or true, or at least are not true in the way that you thought they were. But one of the things that we learned about families in India is that they're used to talking to each other all the time, and often quite frankly, sometimes even rather bluntly. One's appearance is not off limits. If your hair looks funky, or if the clothes you're wearing are all off, they'll say something to you. And it's considered polite, it's considered good-natured, it's not done vindictively. It's done as a way of saying, hey, you might want to think about that, the socks really don't work, or oh, you can't wear that way. I mean, we learned that as Westerners quite often, that, the thing that we thought was just really great, fastened or affixed in a certain way. No. You can't wear that. No, you can't go out looking like that. That's just not okay. And that's good. That's good feedback. It's helpful to know. So one of the things that we realized is that the feedback that we get and give in our culture is different. And it's often a bit less. There's a lot more that's internalized, or there's a lot more that's done in nuance by facial expression, by tone of voice, etc. And there's a lot of noise in India. There's a lot of commotion. And so, you have to sort of speak up. You have to sort of say what you mean and get it out there if it's going to be heard and understood. We noticed this with Swamiji, that if he wanted someone to do something, he would ask them, okay, fine. He would ask again in another day, or whenever he saw that person. So, are you doing that? And sometimes he would ask repeatedly, or say something repeatedly by way of reminding us that such and so is important. And it would be like, didn't he think we heard it the first time? But see, he had spent formative years, 4 years in India in his adult life, and he recognized, repetition is valuable. If you really mean something, you say it a bunch of times. You don't assume that people got it. And so I bring all this up because in this year, which is nearly over now, 2020, we have, by virtue of a pandemic, by virtue of lots of circumstances, but primarily this pandemic, we have been obliged, many of us, perhaps most of us, to spend a lot more time alone, or alone in our families, as a couple, as a family in our home, in a little sort of bubble. And we don't get as much of that external reference. So we don't necessarily have our larger tribe or the same kind of contact. That contact may now come through Zoom. It may come through emails and texts and other means. But the face-to-face, tactile, how am I doing? Am I doing okay? Am I at a good place with my group, with my people? That feeling is a little bit adrift. And we noticed this sometimes in India too, that when people would come to the ashram or would, get more immediately connected, that they were often a bit uncomfortable in ways that we couldn't immediately understand. And part of what we came to learn is that they were expecting constant feedback or regular feedback, like many, many times a day. And we just weren't adjusted to giving that kind of feedback. We sort of figured, you have your assignment, let's get started, let's move on it. And, each person is self-motivated, and, we're not necessarily checking up all the time. We're not micromanagers. And for some cultures, that would be uncomfortable. But what I'm recognizing now, even in our culture, is that many people in our culture in the year 2020 are uncomfortable, or even depressed, discouraged, just not necessarily feeling real comfortable in themselves. And part of the reason is that we don't get much human contact and feedback. And so I suggest two things. One of them being the spiritual, which is the ultimate reference point is God, and the ultimate reference is inside. And that comes through prayer and meditation. And clearly this is a time and a year when diving within is as relevant or even more relevant than ever before. So that's, the spiritual, and that's a message that we give in many ways and quite frequently. But on a practical level, on an outward level, we have to reach harder or reach more vigorously to get the kind of connection and feedback that we're accustomed to with other people. And that has to come through phone calls or whatever method. If it's standing socially distanced from someone 6 or 8 feet away with masks on outside, and we have not been adjusted to doing that before, maybe that's the way it's going to have to come. But it's important that we have reference. There's a neurological center, which I can't remember at the moment the name of it, but spatially it helps us orient ourselves so that when we close our eyes, if we're starting to tip over, this thing starts going off with little warning lights saying, hey, you're falling over, straighten back up. It helps us to stay focused and oriented in space. Well, likewise, we need to stay oriented in our lives. And so take those two thoughts into your own life and see how they resonate for you. The first one, and the most important one, is the spiritual. Dive deep in meditation as well as you can, prayer and meditation, to make the ultimate reference connection with God. But then on a human level, try in vigorous ways to make connections with other people, because I think you'll be surprised to find out how many people are struggling and that your reaching out to them is actually helpful to them, as well as their contact with you will be helpful to you. Namaste.